Hello, my name is John Terr, and I am President and CEO of the Boulder Chamber, and I welcome you to this special industry sector focus on field services businesses and the reopening procedures under the new Safer at Home guidance. I want to start by thanking a few folks, and that's first is to thank all of you who are joining us for this session. We appreciate your commitment to understanding the procedures for safely opening your businesses. I can't tell you how important it is for all of us to get this economy rolling, and having your businesses running smoothly is a big part of that. But absolutely, we need to make sure that we do it in accordance with public health guidance. We cannot afford to go backwards with respect to the COVID virus. So your attention to this, the commitments and the procedures for operating your business today, absolutely important and appreciated. I also want to make sure to thank all of the Boulder County chambers and economic development agencies who are partnering with us in bringing these sessions to you. And then finally, but not least at all, thank you to our Boulder County Public Health team, including the folks who are going to be addressing us today. They've been great partners in listening to us and understanding that we want to work to get our businesses running quickly, but also work with us to make sure that the guidance and procedures fit and are in accordance with the ability for you to operate your businesses. And of course, we all share the same goal. Let's get businesses running, but we need to make sure we do it safely for your workers, for yourselves, and for your clients. So that's the focus of today, and I thank our Boulder County Public Health officials for being partners with us in that. This session will start with just a general sense of where we are in the timeline for our operating procedures and the transition to this safer at home order. We'll also talk generally about public health in the business place so that you get a sense of what's the guidance for all businesses across our community. And then we're going to get very specific on field services, everything from construction to real estate to landscaping. Again, the goal is to make sure that you understand what those mandates are that you need to follow, but also to make sure that we're keeping your businesses operating smoothly. So just to be clear, many of the mandates that you'll hear about are coming down to us from the state order, and that's what we all have to follow. In addition, Boulder County Public Health has some critical guidelines that they also want us to follow to protect public health. But I will say to you that I've really appreciated their understanding of some of the unique characteristics of our local businesses, and they've been very responsive in helping to shape a guidance and procedures that hopefully help you to operate as smoothly as possible and at the same time protect public health. So with that, it's my pleasure to welcome Ambra Sutherland, who is the Field Services and Real Estate Liaison for Boulder County Public Health, and she's going to take it from here and move us through the program. Welcome, Ambra.
Thank you, John. And I just wanted to start off by thanking the Boulder Chamber for hosting these seminars, and we really appreciate your leadership and efforts in these endeavors. And really, it's, the purpose and agenda of these agendas is to help businesses open safely and provide them the information to be successful in phase 2, Safer at Home. And we want to make sure that you have the resources and support that you need in order to do that. And we'll be taking questions. We'll actually be answering some Q&A from the last seminar, and then we'll be taking questions during this session in the Q&A box. So please put your questions there, and we'll answer those at the end of the session. So what does this, who does this field services industry webinar pertain to? So real estate, including marketing services, photographers, stagers, land care and landscaping, house cleaners, including carpet cleaning, window cleaning, electricians, plumbers, handyman, general contractors, home inspectors, including appraisers and land surveyors, architects, engineers, private investigators, and landscape architects. And then lastly, transportation networks such as limo services, call-on-demand transportation, van services. So that's all listed under field services currently. And here's the timeline for where we're at and where we're moving into phase 2 to become safer at home. And as you know, the Safer at Home order was extended until May 8th. And so this is just a timeline of where we're at. So currently we're still in Safer at Home. And then just a couple things that were added. So on 4/24, we added curbside services to the order. And then starting on 5/9, Boulder County has adopted a face covering order. And so that will be put in place, and we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a minute. And then starting 5/9, these Safer at Home standards will be applying. And as you know, the city of Boulder already has the face coverings order in effect currently. So what does the longer term outlook look like? So basically, you know, we're not going to automatically go back to where we were in January and February. It's going to be a process to get there. So be thinking it's probably going to take months instead of weeks. And so really, what the Safer at Home order is still advising is for people to stay at home if they can stay home, only going out when necessary, and then critical businesses to open and limited non-critical businesses to open with precaution. And we will be under this new normal until a vaccine is discovered, or treatment is available, or herd immunity, we've achieved that. So this is going to be our new normal for a while. And then just realizing that Safer at Home will evolve over time, and there are no guarantees that we will not have to go back to stay at home, just depending on the numbers, but we really need to be watching that to see where we're at, to see how this progresses. And then next, where we're at now. So basically, the stay-at-home order is effective until May 9th, as I mentioned. So it's basically, mostly for this industry is going to be the same as the last 5 weeks, basically excluding real estate, which has some changes. And then curbside has been allowed. And then, as I mentioned, the Boulder County face covering order in effect May 9th. And then we are just in where we're preparing for Safer at Home. Using the guidelines that we're going to discuss today. So we didn't discuss the face covering order in the last session, and so I'll just cover a little bit of what that looks like. So under the Boulder County face covering order, which I said is in effect May 9th, everyone under the age of 12 will be required to wear a mask in public. Outside of the home, and where a 6-foot distancing cannot be maintained. So thinking, you know, retail stores, grocery stores, maybe on some trails in Boulder where you're going to be passing someone. So thinking of those situations. And then there are some exceptions to this. So basically, if it's not safe or there's a medical condition for reasons that you cannot wear a mask. If you're working alone, say you're in your home office or you're, you know, at your office, commercial office, and you're alone, that you wouldn't have to be wearing a mask then. And then, as I mentioned, children under 10 would not be required to wear a mask. So what is Safer at Home? Continuing to stay at home as much as possible, as I mentioned, open with restrictions. Remote work is recommended if you can maintain to do that, or if there's things that you can do remotely rather than going into the office, that's advisable. And then just knowing this is a new territory for many businesses, and so that's why these guidelines and checklists are here to help support you. To know, you know, COVID-19, sanitation, masks, like what are the requirements? And then some high exposure risk businesses will still not be permitted, such as large events, gyms, restaurants. Restaurants will be coming online down the road sooner than probably gyms and large events, so stay tuned for that. But basically, you know, we just want to remind everybody, you know, this virus is still as contagious as ever, and it's going to really get worse before it gets better. So anything we can do to really, you know, help reduce the spread is really appreciated. And so what field services industry can do. So one of the questions that came up in the last session regarding showings, and so those will be permitted starting May 9th. And we'll discuss some of the guidelines for that. And then many of these services were deemed as essential, such as construction and landscaping. And so those will be allowed to operate. And then just some expansions, such as retail for construction and landscaping industry will be open now to access some of those sources. And the compliance checklist that we've developed that can be found on our website now, we just added that. And I believe Connie, that the chamber was going to go ahead and send that out as well after this session.
Yeah, we will.
And so basically compliance with the orders is mandatory. You can use the checklist if it is voluntary at this point, but it is just a really good guide on, even home offices, work sites, what are best practices. You can use this also as a compliance aid and communication tool to communicate with your clients and your customers. And then it also comes with a public poster. So that's under for compliance. And then enforcement is basically, we won't be sending out enforcement officers to check these. So we're asking for voluntary compliance. And we're really approaching this from inquiring and education first. And then, and then if issues arrive, we may ask you for the checklist to make sure, or just review the checklist with you if we do get any complaints or violation notices. And then lastly, if we've repeatedly, asked you, or if we continue to get complaints, we may issue orders to close, or civil action is possible. So those are just the basic steps that we take as far as enforcement. And so going over the field services workspace checklist, I really didn't dive into this very much in the last session. These are all listed under general. But there are quite a few for job site and work site specific. So landscape and construction industry might be, really pay attention to these. So basically you really want a coordinator on the job site who's addressed with looking into COVID-19 issues and then monitoring employees. Basically 2 or more positive cases report, you need to report that to Boulder County Public Health. And then maintaining 6-foot distance and discouraging shared spaces. So thinking, if workers need to work next to each other, trying to maintain that 6-foot distancing. The PPE, facial coverings, masks, and gloves will be required at these job sites. And then frequently hand sanitize all high-touch areas, shared equipment, and portable job site toilets. And then the job sites also must provide hand washing facilities and stations and hand sanitizer to all the employees. Post bilingual signage for employees on hand washing and COVID-19 work sites. Best practices, and then reduce the size of a work crew to minimize the number of people on the site. And encourage staggering work crews into multiple shifts. So that's really, looking at, how many people are on the job site and what you can do to try to maintain the 6-foot distance. And then field offices, just encourage and enable people to work remotely, telecommute whenever possible, and then follow office guidelines and use the office sector checklist for your own personal offices. And then next, just employees checklist. So social distancing was required. So thinking about meetings, person-to-person interaction, no meetings or trainings of more than 10 people in one area. And then for real estate, no open houses. PPE, again, facial coverings, masks, and gloves required. And then sanitation required, for hand washing and equipment. And then employee wellness, temperature checks, and have COVID-19 plan for illness. We do have some guidance for the temperature checks provided in the Boulder County document, which I will review just here in a little bit. And then field service for customer checklist, provide paperless estimates, invoices, and other documents when possible. And also payments, looking at if you can take those ahead of time, then that would be great to eliminate some of that person-to-person contact. Maintain 6-foot distancing at all times. Again, PPE required at work or for customers. you know, when you're having these person-to-person interactions. So face coverings, masks, and gloves. And then for transportation network companies, just following CDC and door guidelines. And I do have that listed on our resource page later on. And then for real estate, you know, by appointment only, virtual tours are recommended, no open houses, no food or beverage offered during the showings, and then really limiting number of in-person participants to the greatest extent. So basically you don't want, you know, your grandma and grandpa and all the cousins to come see the house, like really just limiting those to, you know, just minimize the exposure. And then participation by children is strongly discouraged. You know, we do realize that some, you know, kids are probably out of school. And so just, you know, as much as you can, just limiting children from, you know, being there. And then social distancing requirements need to be met at all time, and no handshakes to seal the deal at the end. And then all agents must provide gloves and masks for customer interactions or ensure that they have their own. So, you know, you're really doing a check-in with your customers and clients to make sure that they do have gloves and masks when they're going into, you know, someone else's home or, you know, seeing any of these properties. And then agents, realtors, or homeowners must clean and disinfect all high-touch surfaces between showings. So thinking about, you know, door handles, light fixtures. I know that, you know, you will be required to wear gloves, but it's just important, I think, especially if somebody's living there, to make sure that these are cleaned. And you really just need to, you know, touch base with a homeowner. Will you be doing that, or will they be responsible for doing that? Really just communicating, you know, whose job that will be. And then lastly, just maintain a detailed log of customer interactions for tracking. I realize that most agents, you usually do maintain a log of, you know, appointments. And so maybe this is something that you would already have available, but just making sure to, you know, you have those details logged for every customer interaction. And then some of the Q&A that we had come up in the last session. So will showings be allowed for occupied homes during Safer at Home? And yes, starting on May 9th, those showings will be allowed. And then can I show occupied properties after May 8th? We discussed that. And then will masks be required? Yes, masks will be enforced starting on May 9th. And then number 3, considering social distancing. So can 2 techs drive in the same vehicle? And we really discussed, you know, if they come from the same household, that should be fine. And if you have a larger vehicle and you can maintain that 6-foot distancing, you know, we also really advise, you know, sanitation practices and, you know, keeping the windows rolled down, and then also wearing masks if you are driving together in the same vehicle. And then number 4, when our techs are working outside by themselves, do they need to keep their masks on at all times? Does it apply to tree climbers who are up in a tree? So looking at that, you know, 6-foot distancing. So if you are, you know, within 6 feet of each other, you know, looking at wearing those masks. And I think just anytime, you know, you have at least available, so even if it's, you know, down on your neck, to be able to pull up. So when you are interacting. And then, as long as it doesn't become a safety hazard, so say, you know, you are a tree climber and it's becoming a safety hazard to have the mask on, then it would not be advisable to be wearing that in those kind of conditions. And then on question number 5, will passenger vans be allowed to operate? Yes, they will be. And as I mentioned, there are CDC guidelines for sanitation, and then DORA has put out some guidelines for passenger vans and like Uber, Lyft, some of those other forms of transportation as well. So where can you go for information? So I'm just going to go through this list really quick, and then I'm just going to show you a couple of places where to find the information. So Boulder County, we do have the checklist on there now. We will be developing some PPE resources on there, and the posters for guidance that you can hang in your office or in your job sites are available there. And then just general, you know, COVID-19 illness information can be found at the website as well. And of course, your local Chamber of Commerce can provide support. Industry associations, licensing agencies, the city where your business resides can provide information. And then COVID-19colorado.gov really does have some great health and wellness information there. Center for Disease Control and Prevention. And then, as I mentioned, DORA, the Department of Regulatory Agencies, Occupational Safe and Health Administration, so OSHA guidelines for construction. And then Energize Colorado. It's my understanding that there is going to be a marketplace for PPE, which will be, they're developing that, and that will be available soon. So if you're looking for sources for that. And here's our additional questions or suggestions, and I'll come back to this. I'm just going to switch out and show you a couple of resources online. So here is the Safer at Home checklist that is now available online. So you can download that and print that out and have that for your business. And then this is the Colorado Department of Health and Environment, where you can find those for field services. And so they have also some really good other information there. And here's the Boulder County website. So if you go under guidance for Boulder County, which is kind of down toward the bottom of the page when you first log in, then you come to face covering guidance, best practices for all business, and then household, workplace, vehicle guidance. So that would be good for real estate for the homeowners, a good guidance there. And then outbreak guidance. And then here we are with the checklists for all of the other industries, including field services. And then at the bottom, we do have the posters for construction and worksite safety. So just pull, oh. See if this is gonna pop up. This is, I'm not sure if this link is working. I might have to check this. They just got these up. But basically this is, these are the posters for your work site in restaurant, restaurants, general practices, and work site safety. And with that, I'll just put up our COBIZ information document, and then I think we'll be able to take some questions.
While you're doing that, we will, the email that you'll be sent out after this will include direct links to those posters. In the general practices one, there are posters about social distancing. I'm following the guidelines. So there's the self-certification, you know, don't enter without a mask, those types of things that you might need. Those are all in those resources, and there'll be direct links in the email. The website that she just directed you to, that will also be on that email. It is the Boulder County website for COVID. All right, I'm going to start to filter some of these questions. The mask is only needed when you cannot maintain a 6-foot social distancing outside, correct?
Outside, yes, that's correct.
Okay. Can you tell me, I have a completely outdoor venue on a 50-acre farm, no use of indoor spaces, we have sanitizers, hand washing stations. Will we be, if we will be practicing social distancing, and all guests will check in online. Can you tell me what capacity I should enforce?
So this is it's a farm, is that correct?
Yes. And it looks like they're going to have, they have a public event called Farm Fest, and they need to know if they have a capacity limit.
So events are not being allowed right now. However, if you do have some questions regarding an event, we do have an event, a person that's been assigned to event specifically. So feel free to send it to the COVID Biz, your question with your follow-up information, and I can have John get back to you.
what is the maximum capacity for number of people in a space?
So right now it is 10 people. Would this be for an office?
Yeah, I think there's another question as to just maximum number of people.
Maximum number of people.
Social distancing,
If it's an office, 10. So if you're having a meeting, it would be 10 people. You know, for a showing, you wouldn't want, I would say a maximum of 4, just as a general recommendation.
Okay. So someone made a suggestion. They took disinfectant wipes to their showing and did all the cleaning as they went through the house. I know there's some other best practices that have been shared, such as, you know, don't touch many surfaces, things like that. What other recommendations do you make for making sure you can clean that house in a quick fashion? Yeah,
as I mentioned, you really just, you know, establish the communication between, you know, who's going to go around and sanitize, if a homeowner especially is living there. But basically, you know, if it's up to the agent or the realtor, you know, I think you know, carrying around the sanitizing wipes, I mean, you could just have a towel with, you know, sanitizer as you're going around too, not necessarily have to have the wipes, but I think that sounds like a great practice. Or at least, you know, let the homeowner may want to come around with you just to see what things are being touched. But I think in general, just really looking at those high touch surfaces, you know, especially like light switches and doorknobs and, you know, if there's any closets being opened, that kind of thing.
All right. To add on to that, someone wrote that it's their understanding from the Colorado Association of Realtors and DORA that the state wants the buyer's agent to clean after their showing. Is that Boulder County's understanding?
Can you repeat that again?
There is the statement that the state wants the buyer's agent to clean after their showing, not necessarily the one that's showing the house, not the agent of the homeowner, but the buyer's agent needs to be the one that's cleaning. Is that Boulder County's understanding?
I haven't seen that in the state guidelines specifically to that, but I think it really is just, you know, establishing that communication. I mean, if I was a homeowner and somebody was coming through my house, I would probably want to be the one, you know, making sure that things were clean since I had to live there. But I think just the communication needs to be established.
Are there different guidelines or similar guidelines between commercial and residential real estate?
I would say it's pretty much the same. I mean, the only, you know, the main difference is you probably wouldn't have, you know, nobody's living there specifically and will be, you know, being there on a constant basis after the showings. And so, but I think, you know, the sanitation still is, you know, along those lines that you would have to wear, you know, masks within the commercial real estate properties. And, you know, you would be, the realtor probably would then be responsible for cleaning if you know, if the property manager say wasn't there.
Okay. So in a real estate showing dynamic, which broker is responsible for PPE, the listing broker or the buyer's broker? And is there a guideline as to who's responsible for post-showing sanitization?
We don't really have a distinguished out, you know, who will be providing it. But, you know, basically we're saying that you're requesting, you know, the customer to bring their own, you know, first. And then if they do not have that available, you would need to supply that is how we've kind of stated it. So there's no delineation on who will.
Well, and Veronica with BARA, the Boulder Area Realtors Association, said that the state just suggested that the buyer's agent should sanitize, but it's not documented anywhere and it's just a suggestion.
Okay. Veronica.
And that's also a great resource for individuals. Are shoe coverings required for showing real estate?
They are not part of our PPE, but you know, the homeowner may request that they wear them. I'm sure the agents and realtors have their best practices of what they typically do, but I think, you know, you can ask the homeowner if they would prefer to have people wear the booties.
Okay, so back to the farm and that they have people come. It's a 55-acre farm, and they ask families to stay together and practice social distancing outside. It's not an event per se. Should they reach out to you to kind of get more clarification as to whether or not they're able to operate?
Yeah, they can reach out to me, as I mentioned, and I'll pass it on to John. I don't specialize in events, and so John has the most updated information.
They said it's not an event per se, but it's how they operate. So probably the best guidance is to talk to you about their individual situation.
Okay, yeah, if it's a day-to-day thing, yeah, just shoot me the the messages and kind of your operation plan, and then I can review that, and we can work on that together.
And we'll be sending out a general email as well. They can reach you through that general covidbiz@bouldercounty.org email, as well as your email, which is A Sutherland, right?
Yes, A
At Boulder
Sutherland. Correct.
Okay. All right, one of the slides said gloves will be required for field workers. Is that really a requirement, or is that a suggestion? I know face coverings will be a requirement.
I think it said field offices maybe. We don't have any requirements for field workers. So say like agriculture at this time. Especially if you're outdoors, if you can maintain that social distancing. I mean, I don't see that gloves would be required at this time for that. Just probably, sanitation, best, hand washing, sanitation for those purposes.
This is Lane. I can offer on that. It's for any in-person interactions. So it's kind of really dependent on that. If you're interacting with other coworkers or other patrons that you're servicing, then you need the gloves. If you're performing your work independently with no interactions, you wouldn't need gloves unless it's already required for safety for your work.
Thanks, Lane.
And then that question about gatherings, it's 10 people. So again, any sort of dialogue that sort of seems to circumvent events, we're going to be very critical on that. So 10 people is the limit on gatherings.
All right. Are photographers or stagers allowed to perform marketing services for real estate? It really helps to eliminate home buyers.
I did actually add that to the slide of what field services includes. So, those would need to be by appointment only, with the homeowners, making sure that it would be, that they would have permission to go into the home to do those services. But, at this point, they would be allowed.
Okay. Someone just said, FYI, had an inspector go through a property and he spent an hour cleaning it after he completed the inspection. As an unwritten rule, everyone cleans up after themselves if they visit a property, is kind of the general, I guess, feeling going around the industry.
Is that a best practices suggestion then?
I guess that's
okay.
One of them, and I think maybe it's something that we can get more clarity from the Realtors Association as to what they're recommending for their realtors. Walking on trails or Parks and Rec, do you have to wear a mask if there aren't people on the trail?
I mean, I think you should always have a mask available with you wherever you go, just in case you do encounter people on the trails, but that would be my suggestion.
So the mask order is required masks anytime you can't social distance. So again, if you're by yourself, you're social distancing, but if you're with other people, you need to have a mask. And that's the Boulder County mask order versus just this sector.
Okay. Someone said, I'm a professional organizer. Several of my clients want me back. If I wear a mask and gloves and request that my client wears a mask and we stay 6 foot distance, am I okay to go and work on that site at their home? Of course, cleaning all of the property when I'm done, or the places I touched.
Yeah, professional organizers aren't specifically called out. I mean, I would think that they would fall in under, housekeeping maybe. Lane, do you have any other thoughts for professional organizers?
I think any service that's interacting in a person's home falls under this. So it may not be an exhaustive list, but if your work is to go into someone's home and perform the service, you just need to adhere to these regulations.
We have a question that came in via chat. It's easier if it's in the Q&A, but I'll try to capture the ones that are in the chat. What about tourism guides, fishing, hiking, cycling? I think the question really is about the number of people and what they need to do.
We haven't had that question before.
I know for personal training, which
Yeah.
might fall under, it's 4 is the number.
Yeah, 4 would be the maximum number. And then you do need to maintain the 6-foot social distancing.
Okay. Are house cleaners required to wear masks and gloves?
Yes, they would be.
If you're taking a walk with your family in an isolated area, do you need to wear a mask? This came in after the last specification too.
Yeah, so I think Lane already touched on that one.
Again, masks are required when you can't perform social distancing.
And
If you're all by yourself,
for
then
children.
you're distanced.
And then no mask for children under 12.
And we're hearing a lot that trails and so forth are busy, so you're probably going to encounter somebody along the way. So having a mask with you, even a walk around your house, it's hard to keep that 6 foot on some of the paths.
And the Safer at Home talks about not performing recreation more than 10 miles from your house. So not taking long trips up into the mountains to go hiking and things like that, to find isolated areas that you're really focused on, still staying at home as much as possible.
All right, we're going to touch on the masks a little bit more, but how are you really going to enforce any of this? There seems to be people that are very belligerent about the masks. Can you require it as a realtor? What or any of these other services that are counted on this call? How do we deal with the people that don't want to wear them, and how are you going to enforce this?
So as I mentioned, we're really coming this from an education standpoint. You know, there may be people that refuse to wear them, but I mean, I think as an agent, you know, you're really looking at your own risks and the risks of the homeowners as well. So you have to, you know, be mindful of, you know, the risks that people are taking. We don't have enforcement officers we can send out for this type of thing, that we really are encouraging the agents and the realtors to require, you know, their clients to wear them.
I would just offer that, yeah, we are definitely taking an educational program, but we are working with law enforcement for enforcement. So this is a law, so these aren't just guidelines or suggestions. So violation of those is a violation of the law. We're really targeting people who are most egregious at this. So, and that is happening, unfortunately, that there are enforcement cases that are moving forward. But we aren't just proactively sending people out to look for this happening. It is going to be driven by those egregious situations.
You also on your website have some resources on how to talk to clients about wearing masks, that you can share with other people in your office about how to have that conversation also. But you do have a place that people can report violations. We had some people sharing some best. They said realtors are required to wear masks to protect the clients, and someone suggested don't show the house if they won't comply. So there's just some general rules going around within industries. Now, do house cleaners need to have all the sanitizing products, like for floors and other pieces?
I would say, I mean, I'm not sure what they typically would bring to just clean a house. I wouldn't say that it's probably anything more or less. You know, they do say even just soap and water is, you know, is best. So, you know, we don't have any specific. I think Lane, is it the CDC that just has specific like disinfectants that you might want to just read up on to see if they're recommending any other ones that are better? But I know that there are, you know, COVID-19, I guess, recommendations out there for sanitation.
Yeah, and I think the guidance talks about appropriate sanitizers and disinfectants. But as far as that service of just coming in to clean, they're not going to have to go back and then clean a second time because now they were in there cleaning. It's I think a different service than other services, that are in there that may be contaminating surface. The whole point of the house cleaning was to be cleaning surfaces. So they don't have to go back through and now disinfect the entire house because they were there with their service. That being said, those high touch surfaces, as people are coming in, doorknobs and things, those are a good thing to still sanitize, but they don't need to sanitize the entire house because they came in to clean it.
All right, we wanted just a clarification. The mask rule is not just for realtors, it's for everybody within this industry, as well as in Boulder County, it's for everybody. So it's not just the people working, it's also individuals, people looking at houses, people, bringing, interacting with the public. That mask rules for everybody.
Correct. Yeah. With those exceptions, there's that sort of health exemption for people that it's unhealthy for them to wear the mask for young children. Those exemptions are there, but otherwise, yeah, it applies to everyone in Boulder County who's out in public spaces that can't social distance. Then there's these additional requirements for the indoor setting for these services. So again, whenever they're not able to maintain social distancing in Boulder County, you should have a mask on.
And what type of mask?
So that we'll have guidance also for that. This can be a do-it-yourself mask. We don't want people wearing N95s and surgical masks. That's not what's required for the mask ordinance. It's a face covering. And so the CDC has guidance on how you can make those yourself. There's local producers that are making masks. So again, we have resources. Amber's actually been kind of compiling resources of where people can get masks or how to make them yourself.
Yeah, that will be up on the website.
Great. And it will be in a link you get. Veronica from Barra also said, my experience thus far is that the community is policing itself and are reporting offenders. I know you guys get a lot of violations under that COVID violations in the call center. So there are places for people to report. We do have somebody who came in under the chat that said their sister works for a facility, more of a healthcare facility. When she walked in, nobody was wearing a mask and she didn't feel safe. Should she report this? Should it be to that report to the Boulder County or the county in which that operation is?
Yeah, so the masks were required for essential businesses, and then moving into Safer at Home, they will be required at all businesses. But yeah, certainly if you have a concern, feel free to fill out the online form, or we even have this hotline number that you can call if it's something that needs immediate response.
Okay. I know you don't have a crystal ball, Lane or Amber, but if these requirements are going to prevail until a vaccine or treatment is found, will schools be opening up in the fall?
No, we really don't know that. Our focus is kind of the end of this month into June. So thinking into August and September is so far off. There's so many factors that we have to see what's happening with the effectiveness of these relaxation of orders and how much we see disease transmission within the community. So we really want these to be successful so there isn't any kind of a backslide. But it is going to be very difficult for certain sectors and certain things to be fully relaxed. So we do expect that some versions of social distancing and a lot of these components will be in effect for a very long time. But yeah, we really don't have any idea right now of what's going to happen with schools beyond kind of June 1st.
Okay. We have just a concern that even some retail businesses have security officers and big signs saying masks are required, but nobody is enforcing it and people are just walking in without masks. What is your suggestion for that? Are there any other resources people can have? Like how are we going to overcome some of these issues?
Well, I think that's one of the reasons the ordinance is going to go into effect on the 9th. So again, that hasn't been required. It's just been suggested or encouraged. And again, we feel that in Boulder County that we needed to take to the next step of requiring it. So certainly businesses, again, that's not the sector here, but we have talked to them and given them guidance on making sure they have that signage and then have attendance where it makes sense to really making sure that people have masks. Again, there are a portion of our community that will not have to wear masks because it could be something that compromises their health. But again, the large portion of our community should be wearing masks. And again, that goes into effect May 9th. But we will be checking in on that to see how effective its implementation is going. And ultimately, if there are customers that are not compliant, they can be refused entry, or again, calling the police if they're really that disruptive.
And one of the reasons that the Boulder Chamber, along with all the local chambers and economic development, created signs that were common for our county was so that you'd see common signs for our county within all the different businesses to show that it's not just the business that's putting up some of these requirements, that it's part of that community effort. So one of the resources you'll get are some of that signage that you can put up. It's not just you creating a sign, it's something that looks a little bit more created for the community, for our community's economy and our community's health. The question about where will the hotline calls be directed seems like this could overwhelm the police.
So we are actually manning this call center line. So we have several people doing that Monday through Friday. And I believe, Lane, I think they said they're opening it this weekend too, because they're expecting a few more calls to come in right before we open. So, but we do have, we're only, if you need to call dispatch, non-emergency line, we request that you call us first because we might be able to work with it for you before you end up calling dispatch and overwhelming their systems.
Yeah, the police dispatch is for any kind of really crisis kind of situation. But again, if there are those kind of situations where there's an immediate need, that's what that's for. Otherwise, right, if it's just general complaints, we have the online and the call center.
Any idea on outdoor kid camps this summer?
I think the best guidance I can give you is that we believe that those will likely fall under the childcare guidance that's already out there. So childcare is a critical service, and that has been operational for the last several weeks. So that is the direction that we are going. The state has yet to issue any guidance on camps, but that's the thought at this point. Again, barring the state coming out with something that contradicts that.
All right, do we have any more questions out there? One question was, could they get access to these signs that they can put up on their properties? And again, those resources are on Boulder County site, they're on our site, we're getting them on the other chamber sites, and then we're gonna send it out to you. So, I mean, there are signs that say, keep social distance, if you're sick, do not enter, please wear a mask, required, and things like that you can use. These are for you to use to help you make the case to keep our community safe. So please, please use them as you need them. Any other questions out there? All right, Lane or Amber, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to give?
I really just want to say I really appreciated everybody that gave feedback for the checklist. That really helped us, vet some of these things, through the attorneys, and just really provided more insight into the industry in general. And I really hope that we can make this successful, and we really appreciate all your help in this effort.
Great.
I'd like to just thank the chambers for their effort. Certainly everyone also for taking the time out to work with us and learn this information so we can be successful. And then definitely we want to have this ongoing opportunity to connect with folks on the weekly calls so we can address issues that are coming up and continue to be a resource for everyone. But thank you.
Thank you. And just a reminder, we will have weekly calls on Tuesdays at 2 o'clock. To continue to give you more information, allow you to ask questions. We'll have conversations if there's additional feedback that's needed. So those will also go out with you today, but there will also be available on all the sites we talked about. We're trying to work really closely together as the chambers, the city and counties, just to make sure that we're saying the same thing and that we're all supporting each other. I want to thank you for attending today. Last week was proof why these feedback sessions were important. And as you see today, the guidance was a little different based on some feedback. These orders will go into effect May 8th with May 9th to start. All the resources will be available to you as much as we can. And please reach out if you have any questions or concerns. And thank you to Boulder County Public Health. I appreciate you taking 8 hours today to go through these webinars with the different industries and really listening to the questions so that businesses can open in a healthy and safe way come Saturday. So thank you to everybody. Hope to see you next week, and we will hope that you have a great afternoon.
Thank you.